Hi, welcome back to everybody tuning in today. This is episode 4, and it is a special episode for me today. I'm dropping it on my 25th birthday, so it's definitely been another year in the making. I kind of had an outline of how I wanted it to go, but today is more so just going to be reflecting and kind of seeing how it is, or how things have been up until this point. I know there's that one Huncho song that's going around, and I know that I'm probably going to get posted to that song a little bit today, but it is what it is. So, in terms of like a simple outline for what my goal was for this episode, I kind of wanted to first start off by just looking back at probably like ages 20/22 up until like where I'm at now, and kind of just talk about like highlights, lowlights, big things that had happened in that year of my life. Then after that, I had this little segment called Unc Notes, which was kind of, it's more so about this list of notes that I keep on my phone, kind of with just like parables and sayings that I try to live by, or things that really just stuck out to me and I wrote down. Then after that, I have a Q&A section with a bunch of questions that I receive from people on like Instagram and other platforms, just kind of seeing certain things that maybe somebody wanted to hear me speak on, or if there were any questions in particular for me. And then the last two sections, I kind of wanted to open up the space more so and kind of be vulnerable in a sense and kind of let people know where I'm at now, how my life is going at the moment. Kind of just giving a bigger like glance into who I am as of right now. And then the last thing I wanted to end with was this poem or mantra that my dad had told me about before that I kind of rediscovered on my own recently. And I feel like its words ring pretty true to how I want to approach 25 for right now. So we can get right into it. The first section was kind of a recap of ages 22 to 25. And so that was 2023, I think. Yeah, so around, 21, 22, I ended up graduating from undergrad at Loyola Chicago with my bachelor's in exercise science, and I had gotten a full-time job as a quality manager at Epic Systems up in Wisconsin, Madison. And that was a pretty interesting job. I think I had gotten an offer probably about 3 months before graduation, so around February. And another thing was like my last semester, I had to do an internship that was at a high school on the west side, and it was my exercise science internship. And so for that, one of the things that I was doing primarily was just like exercise prescription, like health and fitness. And I was working with high school students mostly, but also like athletes on the sports team. And it was at a high school called Christ the King, which is, I think, in like West Garfield. It was a bit of a commute, but I honestly enjoyed it a lot. Like going into it, my main goal was to kind of develop those habits and skills for like exercise science. But as the semester went on, I kind of enjoyed it more because I took on more of like a mentoring role too with the kids. I kind of just enjoyed like being able to talk to them, kind of see how they were on like a day-to-day basis, just really get to know them outside of like the weight room and outside of sports. And that was probably like the first time that I kind of had maybe an inkling of an idea of what I had wanted to do, or that was probably like the one of the very first times that I felt most like in tune with what my job was. But fast forward another 3 months, or like 3, 4 months, I started working in July. So I had moved out the house to Madison for like the first time, and work was cool. It was nice at first. I was happy to finally be out of the house, make my own money and kind of just have my own space that I really really wanted up until that point. And so I was working probably from July 2023 up until like April 2024. And after some time, I kind of was starting to get the feeling that like maybe this job just wasn't for me. I definitely was not performing super well at the job, and that was definitely something that I could have been better at, but I just kind of had my own things that I was working through. And one of one of the biggest things, arguably the biggest thing that had happened to me at this age was like something that had happened with a friend of mine at the time. And this was what I wrote my grad school application on, my personal statement. And I'm not going to go like too in detail just for privacy and other reasons. But I had a friend that I had made when I moved out there, and they were a nice person. I really enjoyed their company, and they definitely provided me with a lot of like help adjusting and kind of being able to just live on my own, just being able to exist in a sense and not really worry about life or any details or problems or issues I was faced with at the time. Fun fact, this was also, I broke my wrist when I was living there by myself, and that was like the second time I broke it. I think I was just like hooping, playing basketball, and then I just like went up. Maybe I got pushed from behind, but then I kind of just fell on it really bad. So having to live on my own with like my wrist broken, and it was my left wrist on my dominant hand, it definitely made things a bit more difficult. But like this person kind of went out of their way to help me, whether that came to like cooking food or just checking up on me and making sure I was okay. And I really did appreciate having that presence there because I was away from home and I didn't really have anybody. But one night, I think, it doesn't really matter when, but one night they kind of had like a mental health crisis going on. And I'm not going to go too in detail. I feel like you can kind of gather from my tone in a sense, but they were going through something, and I had gotten a text from them, and I drove over to their house just to check on them and everything, really see if they were okay, because I was kind of worried. And fortunately, it had worked out. Everything went well. We were able to kind of sit down and have a conversation, and after that, they were doing pretty well. I was able to keep checking with them, and fortunately, the problem or whatever was going on at the time was resolved, and it went well. But that night, I guess, kind of spurred something in me, kind of had me just feeling certain emotions that I just had not felt up until that point. And they had also helped me deal with another situation that I was going through at the time, and seeing how much that they had given to me kind of motivated me to try to like give back to them in any way that I could, even though it was like a mental health related situation and I was still very much not qualified. I felt really inclined to do all that I could. But fast forward after that, I had also started going to therapy at that time because another situation that I was dealing with at the time was that I had been like talking to somebody and it just didn't work out. And I think that situation definitely impacted me a lot and really caused me to reevaluate myself and who I was as a person. So I kind of went into therapy just feeling really lost and without a sense of who I was. And that kind of compounded with the fact that work was something that I was not good at. I wasn't really doing well in, and something that I just didn't really enjoy in a sense. It was just a way to pay the bills, keep myself going, kind of sustain and support myself. But in terms of my own personal satisfaction, was not really there at all. So I had decided to go to therapy, and I started going probably around October. And one of like the first things that me and my counselor had talked about was kind of like the lack of a sense of purpose or identity that I was dealing with at the time. And so I had decided to kind of explore more career options because up until this point, I graduated with a degree in exercise science, but I was not really called to it. There wasn't anything that really drew me to the field or something, or a specific position or job that I really felt comfortable and okay with. And on top of that, the job that I had been working at this point, I can't lie, I just kind of went into it for the money just to be able to support myself. But after a couple months, I kind of realized that money isn't everything, and it didn't really matter how much that I had and whether I could kind of afford a lifestyle that I wanted, but more so that outside of the money, there wasn't much fulfillment going on in my life. So I came to the conclusion, kind of, that I wanted to pursue like therapy or counseling as a field. But one of the drawbacks at the time was that in order to become licensed, you need to have a master's degree. And I was very much like so over it because when I tell you, like, getting that bachelor's degree and like finishing it up, that took so much out of me. More so because I just didn't have, more so just because it didn't seem like something that I really wanted to do or pursue in my future career, but more so just because I need a degree at the end of the day. But after that, I was like, you know what? I can't just kind of like let this barrier of like more schooling kind of deter me from maybe the only thing I truly wanted to do in life. So I kind of went back into my next session and I told my counselor, I was like, yeah, I think I'm leaning more towards this. Kind of just getting his perspective, to see how his experience was and kind of coming up with like actionable steps that I could take to work towards that goal. So I ended up reaching out to one of my former professors who really, I think the conversation I had with him was what really pushed me to do it. I was kind of just like, yeah, I'm thinking about becoming a therapist or a counselor, but I don't really know. It seems like I have to apply, but I'm kind of worried that one, I didn't major in psychology, didn't minor, haven't had really any type of experience in the field at all besides that one situation I had with my friend. I very much just felt like I was underqualified. And this professor, he was a professor at the department I studied at Loyola, but he also owned like a practice outside that he worked at. And I had wanted his input because he kind of had a mixture of experiences in both fields. So I thought that he might be able to give me more input. And the main thing he said that really like stuck out to me and kind of encouraged me to take that push was kind of just like, why not? Which, like, it sounds very simple, but like, if you really can't answer that question, I feel like it does say a lot about the situation. Because I was like, maybe I'll postpone it till next year, try to maybe find some type of work or do something. But looking back, like that, if I had done that, I don't think that would have worked out because I didn't work at the job for much longer. So either way, I would have ended up moving back home, and kind of prolonging it would have just prolonged my goal in a sense. So I was like, I guess I have to apply this cycle. And he was like, yep, you kind of do. And he was super helpful, super great. He was like, I'll write you a letter of rec. You can send me your resume. I can take a look over it, kind of provide some pointers and everything. And that was like, at that point, that's where I was like, oh, like this is real. Like this is what, like I can't back out at this point. Like up until this point, it was all just thoughts and words. But now we're taking actions. And that's when I kind of fully committed to it. And I also reached out to the preceptor, like the person at my internship from my last semester who was working at the high school, and I had contacted him and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about going back to school to do counseling, this and that. And I had wanted to run it by him, see what his thoughts were, and also kind of also ask for a letter of rec because I felt like he was very familiar with my work in kind of that area and field. And he was also super great about it, very helpful. and helped me kind of solidify it in a sense. So at that point, it was go mode, and I spent probably from November to like January writing up my applications, submitting my essays. And so fast forward another like 3 months, like 3, 4 months, and I had gotten a couple acceptances, some more rejections, and I had an interview at Hopkins. And at this point, like I've been going to therapy consistently. Like I've been doing better. Like I'm kind of starting to discover myself in a sense. And getting that interview request kind of really shocked me because it was just like, oh, this is very real. Like this is happening. Like I can do this, you know? Because I did not have any room for doubting myself or for error in a sense. So when I had that interview, I just went into it and I was just trying to be as authentic as possible, but also like be who I thought I was or who I thought I could be. And safe to say the interview went well. I got my acceptance a year later. And 2 years later, here we are now. But that was, I think that was, yeah, that was like age 22. So after that, got my acceptance and I put in my deposit, and I was like, August 2024, I'm starting at the program here, moving to Baltimore. But I was finally having like a sense of direction, so to speak. So after that, I think a month or so later was my birthday. I was finally kind of like free from the stress of working, because at that point I had stopped working and I left my apartment. I moved back to the city, and I had like probably the longest summer break that I've ever had for a while. I literally stopped working in like April up until August. I was just living my life, really just enjoying it. Turned 23. I ended up getting like my first tattoo at that time on my thigh, and it was like the Lion of Judah with one love in Amharic. And so kind of making it to that birthday really just was a year of kind of like redirection, like looking at where I had started at 22 versus where I ended. It was great, and I kind of felt like I had been rediscovered and kind of like reborn in a sense in who I was and my identity. And then summer was cool. I went, me and my family, we took a trip to Paris over the summer. I think right before the Olympic Games, and it was nice kind of being in another country. I was able to put my French to the test, and I guess those years in like middle school and high school kind of paid off. I was getting around fine, but we had went over there, and I was really just trying to enjoy my time as much as I could before I had to get back into that school mindset, which was something that I hadn't done for like a good year and a half, and something that I thought honestly I would never be doing ever again. Like when I had graduated, I was very much like, this is the last degree I'm ever gonna have. From here on out, it's just money and jobs and working. But it didn't happen that way, and that's fine. But summer, went to Paris. I also went to Atlanta before to play in this soccer tournament called ESFNA. I really enjoyed that week too. That was a great experience altogether. But summer allowed me to kind of just reflect and get my mind right. Really just enjoy myself before I had to go back to school and kind of lock in. So I moved to Baltimore August, and at this point, this is like the farthest I've been from my family. I lived at home and commuted to Loyola all 4 years, and a good chunk of those were COVID anyway. So even just moving out to Madison was like a huge change for me, just being able to live in my own space and be away from my parents and my family for so long. But I had a car, and the drive wasn't too bad, so I was really going back home pretty much every weekend for the first couple of months, just to kind of still have that contact and be in touch with them. But moving to Baltimore was kind of like a whole different thing. I feel like moving has kind of had me create my own life here in a sense. Now that I'm like a good like 700 miles away from home, and I don't really see my family or my friends as much, but it's definitely caused me to grow a lot more in a lot of ways. But yeah, going back to school was great because honestly, at this point now, I'm going back to school, and it's because I want to go to school, not because I feel inclined to, in a sense. But first semester was great. I honestly was so locked in. I I don't think I've been that locked in prior to that for I don't even know how long, but it just felt so perfect and so natural because I felt like I was finally doing something that was in line with who I was as a person after really discovering myself, you know? And then first year went by, second semester was good. I took a spring break trip to Puerto Rico. That was great. I really liked it. I definitely do want to go back and visit there again. And then after that, I turned 24. I think that year overall was kind of just growth in a sense, and, becoming more and more like myself and kind of having to restart in a new place with new people and just making new friends. But 24, I would say 24 has been arguably like the most challenging year I've had in more recent memory. Before that, I thought it had been like 22 and graduating and dealing with everything, but I've kind of just had my fair share of things that I've been dealing with since turning 24, which was kind of interesting because like when I tell you like the first maybe like the first 3-4 months of 24, I was enjoying myself. Like I thought it was just gonna keep getting better and better from 23. We had went back home. I went back to Ethiopia for the first time in probably like 19 years. So it was definitely quite the experience, and I really enjoyed it because I everybody else that I talked to that has been back was talking about like how great it was, but it had just been so long for me that I really missed it, and I kind of wanted to see the place where I was from. But I was able to go back home, see so much family that I haven't seen in probably since I was like 6. And I was able to see my grandmother too, who I hadn't seen. She lived with us probably up until maybe like 2012, I think, and then she had went back. So it had also been like at least 12 years since I had seen her. But all in all, I really enjoyed the trip because it just gave me an opportunity to reconnect with that part of my identity that I just hadn't really had a chance to fully. And it kind of just felt like I was at home, and just seeing all those family and seeing like how many people there are that like really care for me was really nice. But that after that, that was where things kind of just started to go downhill for a bit, and that's where I've been trying to like work my way back. So like one of the things that had happened is that back home we have a cat, or we had a cat. His name's Dominic, and we got him, I think it was 2021, but we got him when he was like 2. And so when we had left, anytime we left the house to go on like a trip, we would either leave him with one of like our family friends, or I think we had him at a hotel at one time. But either way, we needed to have somewhere to put him. And so with our trip back home, we were gone for probably at least 3 to 4 weeks. So we had him stay with somebody, and that was definitely for a longer period of time. And when we were gone, he kind of had like a medical thing happen, and so I had him checked out. It seemed okay, and so we were coming back soon, but we definitely were missing him quite a lot. And so what had happened was after we got back, we he seemed okay, he was cool, and then after like a week, he just had like something going on. It was related to the medical thing that he had happened while we were back home. And so, like, we took him to the vet. He wasn't really doing the best. And so, by the time we had gotten to the vet, he was just not really acting like himself. There were some things that had happened to him. And so we went to the vet, and they pretty much were saying that, like, we kind of had to put him down in a sense. Like, there was nothing that could be done at that point. And that was something that definitely caused, like, a lot of pain, I guess, within, like, me and my family. Like, I really, like, I don't know how to explain it in a sense for maybe people that don't have, like, pets. But for one, like, our parents were not really the pet type, and I think that's kind of just how Habesha people are in general. But his loss definitely did impact everybody in the family, and I, like, for some people where it's kind of like, oh, like, it's just a pet, like, why are you, like, overreacting, this and that. I I can't really, like, there was a lot of love for him at the end of the day. Like, I guess within our family it felt like we had lost a member, and it definitely left a hole. It left a little bit of a hole, but I couldn't really stay too long because I had to leave to go back to Baltimore before school started, and because I just had work. So I had left, and literally, I think the day after I had left, we had decided to get a new cat, and my sisters and my parents went to the shelter, got a new cat, and I honestly didn't meet her until I, like, went back home for a break. But her name's Cassie, and she's very, like, energetic, like, still quite young, but it kind of having her in the house helped to fill that void in a bit, not necessarily to replace him, but kind of give more space for something else, someone else. And so I went back home, or I went back to Baltimore. I was getting ready to start working again, get my mind right before school, and I think it was probably another couple of weeks, and I had gotten news from back home that my grandmother had passed away from, like, back in Ethiopia. And that kind of added to, like, the, I guess, unresolved grief that I had felt with Dominic. But it had hit a lot harder because I had just seen her more recently. And on top of that, it was because I hadn't seen her for at least, like, 10, 12 years. So to kind of really get the opportunity to see her again for, like, the first time, and to know her and really experience her at the age I'm at now, it really hit me hard because I felt like I was just getting to know her honestly and really discover her in a sense. And that was something that I definitely still was working through. Maybe I am still working through that at times, but that loss definitely hit me a bit hard, and it was also right before school, so I didn't really have much time to adjust or really process things before I had to get back into the groove of things. And then second year it was good. I definitely had it was probably, like, the most difficult semester I've had, fall semester, kind of dealing with that, and also just some other personal stuff that I had on my mind. It worked out. I got through the semester, went back home for winter break, which was something that I really needed at that point. And in all honesty, like, during winter break, I kind of just sat in the house, partly because it was cold, but just because I just didn't really have energy to do much, and I was still trying to process and work through things because I finally had the time and the space to do so. But that was at the end of, like, winter break, like, fall semester, and kind of coming back into it now. I've been I've been doing better. I definitely am still kind of, like, I have my moments, but I've been a lot more busy with classes and work, and I've also picked up internships. So this is a semester that I've been really actually in the field, like doing client facing work at a practice. So I honestly really have been enjoying the experience, and this is like the first time that I can say that I truly love what I do and I really enjoy the work that I do. I get a sense of fulfillment. I think it's meaningful, which is really big for me considering where my life has taken me the past couple years. So, kind of being here now is definitely kind of like an answered prayer that I definitely had prayed one too many times. And kind of looking forward to it now after the semester, I'll probably take some more summer classes and do internship in the summer and the fall. And my goal is to graduate and finish my program around like December. And after that, I can start working fully licensed in January. But that's like a general timeline of where my life has been over the last 3 to 4 years, Definitely had some downs, but had just as many ups. And I'm still working through it each day, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where the next couple years go. But that was the end of like the first kind of section for this episode. Now we will go into my own little section called Unc Notes. And like I said, this is kind of me trying to share some of the wisdom that I've found in like some books that I've read, or just things that I've found that kind of just spoke to me. So for today, I wanted to focus on this book that I had read a while ago. It was called As a Man Thinketh by James Clear. I'll put the link in the description, but it definitely has some nuances to it, but it was a self-help book. I think that was published in the early 1900s. And it's not too difficult of a read, like it's not too long, but I think one of the main messages that stuck out to me was being able to realize the power that you have in your own life and kind of taking control in a sense. So I just had a couple like quotes that I had saved from the book that really spoke out to me, and I'm just kind of go through them, really touch on them and what they mean to me. So the first quote is, "A noble and God-fearing person doesn't become that way randomly or by luck, but as a result of continued effort in righteous thinking and association with God." And that kind of spoke to me because I'm definitely somebody who I think is very intentional, and I like to think of myself as a good person, and it can definitely be difficult to feel that way at times, especially if life kind of puts you in circumstances or situations where you feel that you maybe not be that person. But I think I use it more so in terms of like a growth mindset, where even if I'm not like as great as I want to be, or maybe I'm just not as God fearing as I should be, it gives me kind of reassurance and encouragement that it's not something that I'm just supposed to like wake up with tomorrow and kind of tell me like I'll just wake up and be the most God fearing person there is. No. It kind of shows me that it's a marathon. Like it's not something that you do right away, and kind of forces me to acknowledge that I can't just do things and become that person so easily. It takes effort, and that's where I enjoy like who I am now. Like it's the progress that I've made. Like being the person I am now took me time to get here, and being the person I want to be is going to take more time. And that is a result of the effort that I put in by thinking more righteously, by associating with the right people or with God more closely. That's a goal for me that it's something that I can still accomplish and do, but it just takes more time. And at the end of the day, it is reflective on me and what my effort is. And the second quote was, suffering is necessary in life as suffering is necessary for purification. Suffering is meant to cleanse one and weed out all that is useless and impure. He who is of pure mind and soul no longer suffers. And this quote is something that I've definitely been looking at a lot more, because I feel like I've been, maybe suffering is too harsh of a word, but I feel like I've definitely been hurting and kind of in pain. And it kind of reassures me that the pain is not without a purpose. The pain, although I don't see the end result or the outcome or what this pain will bring me towards, hopefully, I trust that it is for the right reasons. Like, when I think back to the whatever I was going through a couple years ago, that was a rough time for me personally. That was probably like the lowest I had been up until that point in my life, and I just hope that it would get better, and it does get better. And that's something I try to think of now, where whatever pain or suffering I might feel now is working for me towards the future. I may not know how, or I may not know when it gets better, but I trust that this pain has a purpose. And allowing yourself to really embrace the pain, because you can't, like, I know me personally, like, if I'm hurting, like, I'm hurting. Like, I won't deny myself the emotion or the pain that I'm feeling. And I've found that kind of just taking it in stride and accepting it as it goes kind of helps me in just like getting past it, because the pain will pass. It's not, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but it's also not always thunderstorms and clouds. It does get better, and I think looking at maybe any pain or suffering that you feel in the moment, just recognizing that as much as it feels permanent, it is quite temporary. Even though you may not know when it ends, but it does, the pain has a purpose. It does. And the next quote was, "You will be what you will to be." And that's pretty simple to me. It kind of just says that you are a direct result of your thoughts. And that it coincides with another quote in the book, and it says, "All that a man achieves and all that he fails to achieve is a direct result of his thoughts." Quite simply, whatever you think is whatever you do, is whatever you feel, is whoever you are. And kind of going to like the smallest level at that would be to change your mindset, change your thinking. And I feel like a lot of people don't recognize how powerful our thoughts are, and the ability you have to really just change your outlook. Because I recognize that for a lot of people, a lot of your circumstances are outside of your control. Like, a lot of the things that happen to you in life, you have no control over. But these two quotes really stick out to me by saying that even if you cannot control what happens to you, you can control how you respond to it and how you react to it. And that starts with your thoughts. So being able to first just understand that it's happening. It may not be fair. It may not be quite enjoyable. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes in life you kind of just have to roll with the punches and really just take things as they come. And in that, you can't let yourself become too dictated by it, and more importantly, your mindset. The next quote that I had was, "He who has conquered doubt and fear has conquered failure." I think that's pretty self-explanatory, because doubt and fear are the primary emotions that kind of surround you when you think about failure. You often have the doubt of, what if I don't succeed? What if I fail? And then the fear of actually failing and what the consequences of that might be. And being able to kind of get over the humps of self-doubt and fear really just lets you go from failure, in a sense. Not to say that you should try to avoid failure, because I will tell you personally, like, you if you try to avoid failure, it will find you. I've failed so much. When I think of failures in my life, there are a couple. Like, I've failed spectacularly, but I've also succeeded. But oftentimes we are not defined by our failures, but by our successes. And often it only takes one success to outdo 10, 15, 20 failures. For example, I was taking a physics class like my junior year of undergrad, and I needed it to pass, or I needed it to get my prereq so I could do my classes for senior year and graduate. But it was literally like fall semester. I was taking physics 1, and physics, everybody knows about physics. Physics really tests you. So in the class, there were 4, maybe 5 exams, including the final, but the professor dropped like one of the exams. And so I was going into it, I was like, you know what? Did not like it in high school, but I have to take it now. I'm gonna just thug it out. I'll be okay. And so we took like the first exam. I think I got like a 75. And in my head, I was like, you know what? It's fine. I can come back from it. This will be the exam that I drop. I take the next exam. I got like a 50 or a 60. So at this point, I'm like, that 75 from the first exam will have to do. This is the one that's getting dropped. And then the third exam comes around, and that one, I kind of just accepted my fate at that point. I can't lie. I was like, in the weeks leading up to it, I kind of like, I just could not study, and I was kind of just hoping by some miracle I would pull through and pass, right? Anyway, test day comes around, I take my exam. It was like multiple choice for a bit, free response. I really only filled out the multiple choice, if I'm being honest. I scribbled some stuff, walked out the exam room probably in like 15 minutes, and it was like a 2-hour class. The grade was not great, very much less than ideal, but looks like that 50 that I got on the second one wasn't getting dropped. So I took a walk around campus, because it was really starting to hit me that I had just bombed that exam, and I didn't have any room for error. So failing that kind of put me in a situation that I was not ready for. But anyway, fast forward a week, and I get my like grades back online, and it was out of like 50 points. I got a whopping 8 out of 50 points, which translates to about 16%. And that was when I withdrew from the class. I took that W, locked in the rest of the semester for my other classes, and really just tried to keep it out of my mind. But it was a required class, and I needed to take physics 1 and 2. So at that point, it was pretty much apparent that I needed to take physics over the summer. So I think I finished the lab for that semester, but I had to come back and take it over the summer. And with that failure still fresh in my mind, I was like, I can't afford to mess up now. Like, this is like serious at the point, because if I don't pass this, I don't graduate, and I don't want to like just delay my graduation even more. But I took it over the summer, physics 1 and 2, locked in, got it done, and it worked out. I took my senior classes, did everything, and I graduated on time. But like that 16%, that's probably like the worst I've ever done on an exam. And like when I think about it now, like I really just laugh at it, because I don't know who I thought I was, how I thought I was gonna pass, but that 16% really humbled me, in all honesty. But that was a moment of failure, and kind of going past that and understanding that I can't let this happen again, and kind of not leaving myself doubt that I wasn't going to pass physics the second time around, and kind of forcing myself to only see success as the only possible option. Failure was not an option at that point. But I say that to say that, like, when I talk to people now, like they don't see failed physics and got a 16% on his exam. They kind of see me by my other qualities or my other successes. And it wasn't something that came up with my grad school applications, I can tell you that. It was something that I had to learn from and grow from to kind of move past it in a sense. And even though I thought that really defined me and was a true reflection of who I was at the time, like it felt like the biggest thing to me in that moment. Like I was sitting there really contemplating life. Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not smart enough for this. But being able to move past it and look to the future with kind of like hope and kind of recognizing that one test does not make or break who you are. One test, I don't think any test that you ever take truly is indicative of who you are as a person or what your character is. And I say that personally because that test really, really had me thinking and doubting myself for a while. These next two quotes are kind of like in sync, but the first one is, "He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little, and he who would attain highly must sacrifice highly." And the other quote that goes with that is, "In all human affairs there are efforts and results. The strength of the effort is the measure of the result, and chance of luck is not the measure of such success because you cannot determine it." And what that is kind of saying is that the success that you see is a direct result of your efforts. Like going back to the first one, "He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little." You can't just walk your way into success. It is something that happens through repetition, through countless hours worked in the craft or whatever it is that you do. And I feel like a lot of times we're used to instant gratification and kind of hoping that things will just fall into our lap, but it's very rarely is that the case. And oftentimes that is the test that comes with it, to see if you are worthy of that success, because are you truly willing to stick to the craft and to sacrifice countless hours to get that success, you know? It's hard because it can definitely be very annoying if you've spent so much time into something and you're not seeing the fruits of your labor. That is often what kind of pushes people away from not seeing it. But for those that maybe just are hoping to achieve something, it doesn't just come to you. Like the things that you truly earn and the success that you see, it is a direct result of your thoughts, your actions, and your sacrifices. And that is kind of the trade-off that comes with it. You sacrifice that time spent doing things in hopes of bettering yourself or accomplishing what it is that you'd like to do, and in turn you see the fruits of your labor. The strength of the effort is the measure of the result, and that's just kind of how life works with that relationship in work and kind of reaping what you sow. This last quote is something that I feel speaks to me personally in my personality and how people view me. But it says that a strong, calm man is always loved and revered, for he is like a tree that gives shade in the desert or a sheltering cave in a storm. Rain or shine, whatever life throws, it makes no difference because he brings peace and serenity regardless. And that is something that I try to embody, not necessarily just as a person, but also in my sessions as like a therapist with my clients. I really hope to kind of provide a more like calming or soothing presence to people. And I feel, based on the feedback that I've gotten from people in general, I feel like it works pretty well. But I try to kind of live by this even when I might be going through my own storm, because I think that life can definitely get very rough and messy at times. It, like I said last episode, there's seasons of darkness, seasons of light, but at the end of the day, I try to be the same regardless of whatever the storm is, because let's say with the different seasons, if it's cold, you need shelter, you need that cave, you know, you need to have the place to kind of just recover, hibernate, whatever it is that you may, but you need that shelter. And then on the flip side, when it's the other way, when it's summer and when it's hot, you need the shade, you know, regardless of whatever life throws at you, whatever the conditions may be. I try to be as consistent as possible in how I present to others and show up for other people. But I think that's a wrap for Unc Notes right now. If you guys enjoyed that, I can bring that back with more stuff in the future. Now I kind of wanted to go to the Q&A section, and these were just like questions that I had from people. And the first one was, what would my life be like if I didn't go back to school? In all honesty, I really have no idea. I think that I would probably just maybe still be kind of lost, unsure of who I was, because I think if I didn't take the jump when I did and kind of apply and do everything that I did, I really don't know what I would be doing. In all honesty, probably be back at home, maybe working a job that I don't like. I don't know. I would definitely feel a lot more lost in a sense. Kind of probably the same feeling I had when I was working the first time. Just not very fulfilled, kind of feeling lost personally and unsure of who I was as somebody. The next question, or not question, but said Unctivities Rex for future Uncs. Um, I've kind of accepted the Unc label. I find it kind of funny, and I guess I've just been rolling with it. But it's kind of funny with my friends who are like 2 years younger than me, and I'm kind of just like, you have 30 minutes. Like I remember I was 23 like yesterday. Like it shows up a lot quicker than you do. But in terms of like recommendations, or I guess things to do, life has just been so simple for me, if I'm being honest. Like, it really does not take much for me to kind of, I guess, enjoy my days now. Like, my day, like, I know I'm having a good day when, like, I leave my apartment and I catch the perfect bus at the right time and all the lights are green. I get there, my commute is cut down by like 5-10 minutes. Like, that is already like a better start to my day than what a regular day would be. That's actually kind of funny because it reminds me of like this. It wasn't a bad day. It was an interesting day, we'll say that. But this was like, I think last semester I had a class, and for the main campus was under construction at the time. So like I would go to like the main campus and then take a shuttle to the other campus. So one day I had a class and I was trying to catch the city bus to get to campus so I could take the shuttle from there. And so I got out of my apartment. It's like middle of the day, maybe like 12:01, and I go to my bus stop waiting for the bus because it says it should be on the way soon. And so there's like, for like Baltimore, there's like two main buses that I'll take. It's either like the silver bus, which you have to pay like $2 for, or like the purple bus, which is just like the free bus. So I'm just waiting for the bus, and there's this guy that's walking up like by the bus stop, and like, for anybody that's like from Chicago, or like you're used to like CTA and public transportation, there's always somebody saying something, like there's always people just trying to talk to you or say something. So I see the guy walking up, and then he kind of starts talking to me, and so I was like, I had my AirPods in, I was just listening to music, and then I was like, oh, okay, maybe he's saying something important, let me take a listen. And so he's like pissed, like he's really mad, not at me, but he was like, oh, like I walked down there, I was at the bus stop before this, and the bus driver wouldn't let me on. It was a silver bus, so like you had to pay like $2 for it. He was like, the bus driver wouldn't let me hop on because I wasn't paying. I was just trying to get on there for free. And he was like really mad, and I was kind of just sitting there like, oh, mm-hmm. Like, yeah, that's crazy, whatever, this and that. And so he was like, I'm about to shoot this bus up. And I was like, oh. And now I kind of just went silent. I couldn't really just be like, yeah, yeah, But I was like, I just went silent at that point. And in my head, I'm like, I need to catch this bus. If I don't catch this bus, I am going to be late to class. And part of me was like, it's like $2. I was like, I mean, I'm a broke college student, but like $2, I feel like I could spare the $2 for like his bus ticket. I was like, it's not that serious. We have places to be. So anyway, the bus comes and she's at the stop, and I was like, I see her and the guy's standing next to me, and she's looking at me and she's like, "Are you gonna get on the bus?" I was like, "No, no, you're good. I'll just catch the next one." And then I turn around and the guy's gone. I don't know where he went. So now at this point, I've missed the bus and I'm gonna be late to class. So I send my professor an email, let them know, and then I wait for the next bus, which is like the purple bus. So purple bus comes, I get on there, and I'm getting to campus. 3 stops later, guess who hops on the bus? It's the same guy, and he seems to be like kind of calmed down, but then he like starts like he goes like to the back and starts talking to somebody else, and I have my AirPods in, but like I'm like putting the volume down because I'm like trying to hear what's going on, like in case he starts crashing out. And so like I can hear him like he's talking to the guy back there, and he's just like, yeah, like I don't care, like I'm a crash out, whatever this and that. He was like, I'll shoot this bus up right now, blah blah blah. And at this point I'm like, oh my goodness, like it's not even 1:30. Like I just didn't really have. I was kind of laughing at the time, but at the same time I was like, I don't think he's gonna do it. I was like, if he was gonna do it, he would have done it by now. But luckily, my stop comes up. I get up off the bus, get to my shuttle, get to class. But that was like one of the times, like that wasn't even a bad day. It was like an interesting day, but it really is like the simple things in life for me. So kind of just being able to like enjoy the simple things, like spending time with like my friends, talking to like my sisters or like family who I just am not around right now. Just being able to enjoy the presence and company of others who like really know me deeply and personally. I would say that life is not easy, but it's simple. And what I mean by that is that it's not easy in terms of the obstacles or things that you face as you go through life, but it's simple in the sense of do what you feel kind of called to do, like being more intentional in your actions, kind of being intentional in who it is you spend your time with or what it is that you spend that time doing. It's really simple, I think. I just try to do things that bring me joy and make me happy, and I feel like my life, it hasn't been easy, but it's been worth like every minute. I'd say it's something that I've enjoyed and that brings me joy. The next question was, what was my favorite age? I'd have to say 23. I feel like 23 was a very like much overdue break and kind of allowed me to just explore life and really just have the time to do things and get my mind right. Really, I didn't have the pressure of school, didn't have work, and I was just getting to the point where I finally had my idea of my own purpose and what I wanted to do, and I was able to finally get to that point. This next question was talking about toxic masculinity against therapy, and I could have a whole episode on that. And like it's such a multifaceted issue because it doesn't even stretch just not even just toxic masculinity in all men, but also like in my own experiences as like a black man or as like a Habesha man. Like there is quite a lot of masculinity or like toxic masculinity against it, and I think it really just goes back to the simple fact that like growing up, my like parents' generation hasn't really been the most open with their emotions, especially with men. There's always the feeling that you need to be strong in that showing emotion makes you weak. But I would argue that that is not the case. I'm really grateful for my dad because I feel like he has allowed me to engage with my emotions a lot more in a healthy manner and has allowed me to really have the space to understand myself and recognize what my emotions are. But with like the toxic masculinity, I really think it's such like a huge widespread issue, and in terms of how to like combat it, it's I feel like one of the things is like it's up to our generation in a sense to kind of move forward with that and kind of change the mindset around it, change like the thinking about what it means to be a man and to be in touch with your emotions and to kind of be aware of them, because I feel like you are more dangerous as a man when you aren't in touch with your emotions. Like if you have no way to like process or cope with your emotions in a healthy manner, I don't think like that is kind of dangerous, because if for one, like life will show you everything. So it's not even as if you can avoid like certain negative emotions. Like those are guaranteed. Like you will always have something to deal with. Like something will always be thrown at you. So to not kind of have the space to, or not even have a coping mechanism that allows you to process that in a healthy way, it will kind of just often cause you to like lash out or just deal with it in unhealthy ways, like maladaptive coping mechanisms. And a lot of times, like those consequences or those actions can have consequences for those around you, whether that might be like abuse, whether that's like verbal, physical, other things, but you cannot really expect others to handle your emotions. And with that too, like as a man, like whether you're like married or you have kids, like how can you hope to help somebody deal with their emotions if you aren't able to deal with yours? Like it's very much one of the things where like you cannot try to help other people and like go be of some assistance or provide reassurance if you have the same issues, because even though everybody has different circumstances, we all have the same emotions. You know, like the same experience might not impact you and me the same, but regardless, there have been times in all of our lives where we've had very similar emotions. And it is, like I said, the way in which you handle those emotions and the things that life throws at you that really shows who you are and what you're made of, in a sense. So I think that in order to combat this toxic masculinity against therapy, one of the things is to first start at like an individual level. And I know for me what that is just trying to kind of push that conversation or like push the narrative or possibly just leading by example. I feel like I've been pretty open with other people about my own experiences with therapy and what it's done for me. But I definitely see that a lot because that is kind of the field that I work in now, and seeing that there's still a lot of stigma surrounding it, and undoing that stigma and changing the stigma will take time for sure, but it will definitely take a lot of effort. And I feel like by being like an example or being able to push that narrative and have that conversation in spaces where it isn't being had, that's like one of the first steps in being able to kind of move towards that. So the next question I had was moving to a new city and making connections. And I wanted to touch on how it's different for those who are moving for school versus moving for work. So, as somebody that has done both, I will say moving to a new city for work was definitely a much different experience. But I feel like when moving for work, one of like the things that they had really pushed us was like making friends specifically at the company. And that's not really like I'm friends with like my coworkers, you know, but a lot of times sometimes you just want to see people at work and you don't really care to have conversations outside of it. Sometimes that's how it is. And I feel like there are certain like dynamics in the workplace that can kind of make it a bit difficult, where like your friendship might stand with somebody. So I'm not completely against that at all. Like if you can find somebody who you definitely mesh with at work, go for it. I think it's great. But wish that I had definitely had more exposure outside of work, and I didn't really. And I think that was just because of where I was like located. But if I could go back and do it over again, I think one of the things that I would do is like just really like kind of putting yourself out there in like certain hobbies that you have. So like for example, like if I really like playing soccer, I would kind of just like force myself to get out the house and drive out to where like the field is and kind of meet people that are playing soccer, because for one, there's already that big common shared interest there, which makes it easier. And even if like they just aren't my vibe, not my type of personality, now I already have an outlet for one of my favorite hobbies, and that's already filling a void that I had before, you know. So kind of like putting yourself out there, like putting yourself into spaces that you would want to be in if you already had people, if that makes sense, you know. And if you like don't mesh with them, there's other hobbies that you have. Finding like other things, like if you like trivia, like go to a certain bar when they have like trivia nights and stuff. And there's like different ways you can do that. Like I don't have a Facebook, but I'm pretty sure like you can join Facebook groups in like the city or the area for that common interest, you know? Like as an adult, I feel like one of the things people don't touch on as much outside of college, like after you graduate, is that it's so much more simple to meet people and make friends in college because you're all around the same age, like you have the same end goal at the end of the day. But like once you leave and you're kind of out into the real world, it can definitely be kind of tough, especially when you like end up working and living somewhere that you've never been before, and now you're in like adult life. So I think being able to find people with those shared hobbies and common interests definitely is one of the best ways to start. And that way you can either have one friend group that kind of fits all those hobbies and needs, or you can have multiple friend groups which have like each hobby that you need specifically. You know, you have variety in a sense, and you can hang out with different people when you want different things. And my advice is pretty similar for like if you're moving for school. I think it's like the same thing, like kind of going to like the clubs or like the activity and I forgot the organization fairs, and kind of just like looking at the specific clubs that interest you, that you would want to be a part of, kind of being able to be around people that have those shared commonalities, you know. I think it's definitely a bit more simple when you're in school because like I said, you kind of have the same end goal, you're in the same situation, and there's like it kind of just cuts out some of the small talk because you know what they're there for, what they're trying to do, and that's already like a commonality that you can work from together. Versus in the real world, you kind of have to seek out interests and kind of seek out what you have in common with other people. So this next question was talking about kind of giving yourself grace, and I wanted to pair that with like imposter syndrome, which I think is something that impacts a lot of people that come from like marginalized groups in society, or just people who have like those minority statuses. Like I know like feeling like you shouldn't be in spaces that you are in. So with giving yourself grace, I've I feel like I've gotten better at forgiving myself for mistakes that I've made, you know, but a lot of times what I've come to realize is that oftentimes I am my own worst critic. Like when I sit here and one of the prime examples is like when I was starting to like record these episodes and start this podcast, like I did not like the sound of my voice at all, and I would like really overanalyze everything that I was saying. But when I like think about it, like when I talk to other people, when I'm getting feedback for it, they enjoy it a lot more and they don't even pay attention to that. And that's just like one of the ways where like it's very easy to be your own worst critic. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that you are the one who knows yourself best. Like you know your capabilities, your limits, what you can do, what you can't do. So when you maybe don't live up to what you're able to do, it makes it more difficult because in turn you're kind of disappointing yourself, because you know you could be better. But the thing with life is that you can never truly give 100%. You know, not, and I don't mean that in the sense of like you can't give your best effort, but like as a person, like you can't be at 100% all the time. Like some days you have bad days, sometimes they're rough, like sometimes there's something weighing on your mind or something heavy. So you can't always maybe put your best foot forward. And that kind of goes back to like the talk on failure, like failure is guaranteed. Like you cannot do anything without failing, because out of failure comes growth, and out of that growth is where success comes from. So with giving yourself grace, I find that what has worked best for me has just kind of being able to stay grounded and stay present, like taking it one day at a time, one task at a time. And with that, it's often kind of being able to look at where you are, like how far you've come, but at the same time, you still have so far to go. And I think that is why it can be hard to give yourself grace, because if you have an end goal of the person you want to be or something at like somewhere you want to reach, seeing those failures just feels like a setback. And oftentimes it feels like that setback is going to set you back permanently, when that's not really the case. And that's where kind of giving yourself grace comes in, because like I said earlier, like one test, one exam, one obstacle does not define who you are at the end of the day. And just because you failed at something does not mean you're going to fail forever. Failure is temporary. Failure failure might be followed by more failure, but it can just as quickly be followed by success. So giving yourself grace is kind of being able to stay grounded and be present by recognizing that the failure you have now does not define your success in the future. It is not indicative of your future or your past. It is your present right now. And I mean, for one, your past is what got you to this present, and this present is what leads to the future. But for one, the past is done. Like, it's done, it's over with, and it got you to where you are now. And that's growth in itself. Like, you could be living a prayer that you had before. But in terms of your future, that is still yet to be determined. And granted, like, if you fail, like, there might be consequences to it sometimes. Like, it might set you back a bit. But it does not push you off the path of your future. It does not truly take away that future unless you allow it to. And that's where we kind of go back into being able to roll with the punches and being able to recognize when failure happens and not allowing that failure to define you. And I think that was the last question. I have one more that I kind of wanted to use to segue into like this last bit on where I'm at now. But I do enjoy like having the feedback. I really enjoy having people engage with my content, because it makes me feel as if I'm not really talking to myself, and that there are people that take something away from it. But this last one was kind of in line with the toxic masculinity against therapy, but more so raising mental health awareness and clarifying misunderstandings. And before I really dive deep into this like last section, I kind of wanted to just preface it by saying that like mental health is like a very complex subject to like understand one's mental health, and that's something I've recognized more and more in my work with clients and other people. There's always something else, like there's always something else to learn, and like one of the biggest things is that nobody is the same. We all have our own experiences that shape us in different ways, but to truly understand somebody is a very tall task. And I say that to say that, like giving grace to yourself, it is important to give grace to other people as well, because ultimately I feel like a lot of people suffer in silence, and you often really don't know what kind of has people act the way that they do. Like you don't know everybody's experiences, what they've been through. And that's why I really try to go at talking to people and just like meeting people with kindness in a sense. And I feel like that is like one of the things that I do to kind of help in what little ways I can. Just being able to kind of spread like kindness with others and being able to treat people with respect, because sometimes you don't know what somebody's going through or what they have been through, because for them to still be there is an achievement on its own. But like I said, what I do to kind of help, I guess, push the stigma or try to kind of reduce it is just be more open and vulnerable. I think back because I had a conversation with one of my friends a while ago, and one of the things that he said to me that really stuck out to me was that he really appreciates my ability to be vulnerable and to be like transparent and open with other people on where my head is at or how I'm feeling. And that meant a lot to me because I pride myself on being someone who is authentic and open and honest with others. I'm pretty much an open book. Like, if you ask, I'll probably tell you. If I don't, I probably have a good reason not to. But moving off of that angle of being like open and honest, I wanted to take this time to kind of just share where I'm at right now. And it's something that I've been thinking about more so because of a recent assignment that I did that caused me to introspect and reflect on my own mental status as of late. So recently for my classes, we had to kind of write this research paper where we would do like a self-referral. And this was after we had taken 3 separate assessments kind of evaluating ourselves. So one of them was a personality assessment, kind of just getting a better gauge of what type of people we were, our personality, kind of looking at like extroversion, openness, and other things. The second one was like the strong interest inventory, and that was kind of focused on like looking at like vocational and like career interests and kind of being able to see like maybe what fields or jobs you might lean more towards. But the one that really caused me to think as of late was my BSI. And BSI is a brief symptoms inventory. And so, what the brief symptoms inventory, like the goal of it, is to kind of just assess somebody's current mood and like functioning, like where their mood is right now, how are their emotions, like their mental state. And I want to preface this by saying, like, this is not like advice, like, this is not clinical medical advice. Like, I'm still in training, not licensed. I'm doing this more so to kind of push the conversation forward by being more open about where my head is at right now. I'm kind of just hoping to have it in a space that encourages more reflection. So, what my BSI kind of showed was that my current distress levels are, I guess you would say, a positive clinical case. And what that means is that my mood is elevated in the sense of like stress, psychological distress. And I mean, that was something that I had known already. Like, I know that I'm not maybe like feeling my best self right now. And the other thing that we did in the assignment too was that we had to kind of give like a diagnosis in a sense. So I opened up my like textbook DSM-5 and I was going through just like the different like disorders, and from what I could see, I put myself as currently in the midst of like a depressive episode. And I'm not really saying that more so as like a cry for help. Like, I have my own therapist who I've been going to, and he's been super helpful. But I kind of wanted to say that not necessarily for myself, but for other people. I've definitely been kind of just taking it a day at a time, but I feel like I'm like pretty high functioning still. I don't think most people would really look too much into it or kind of see this coming in a sense, and that was why I wanted to at least put it out there and be vulnerable so that maybe there's other people who might be having the same issues or might be going through something. And I'm hoping that my me sharing what my current situation looks like might encourage people to really be more open and kind of take that step and just being able to acknowledge that maybe something isn't right now, you know. I think that life throws so much, and for me, I've been rolling with the punches, and they just like kind of kept coming for a bit. But I'm hoping that at least the things that I say aren't kind of just like things that fall upon deaf ears. But I feel that me kind of living through my own kind of season right now in storm will help to, you know, just encourage people to recognize that at the end of the day, like, you're not alone. I definitely have my own things that I've been going through, and I will probably have more things that I go through in life, but it's all about kind of being able to take that first step and recognize something and saying it, whether it is by yourself. You know, I understand that it's definitely scary to have that conversation or say that to other people. And like one of the things that I use to like really keep me going is just like recognizing that like my state now is not my state forever, you know. Emotions and thoughts are temporary. They do pass, as much as they may not feel like it, but they pass, they go by. And I've seen that a lot, I guess, in the battles that I've fought, like mentally, in a sense, just kind of having my own things to work through and process. But even though I am in the midst of, I guess, a storm right now, there's always a rainbow that comes later, like it gets better. And I think that rings true for everybody. And one of the things that I've been doing, like on my own, is kind of just relying on God a bit more. I haven't said this, but I mean, most people that know me know, but I'm Ethiopian Orthodox, and I think religion is something that has always been a big part of my life, something that I grew up with. So I really kind of value having that relationship with God and being able to kind of use that as another outlet, whether that's through prayer or going to like church or other groups. But I think spirituality and religion is something else that I've kind of relied on that helps me recognize that like there are better days ahead, you know. It's not always raining, sometimes there is sun. And sometimes that sun stays for a lot longer than you expect, and you really learn to relish it and enjoy it because you know that someday the rain might come back, but in those days that the sun is there, you kind of have the ability to not really worry about the rain and just enjoy the weather as it is. And I wanted to kind of use that to segue into like this last section. And I wanted to talk about this poem or book called Desiderata. And it was written by this man named Max Ehrmann in 1927. And it pretty much is just kind of like a poem written on kind of providing more advice on living a life that is full of like peace and integrity. And I chose this poem because I feel like it aligns a lot with some of the themes or values that I try to live my life by. So I'm going to go ahead and read it right now. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexatious to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy. And that was the poem. I think that there's a lot of wisdom in it, and I really do resonate with a lot of the themes in there. But I kind of wanted to leave on that note, kind of give a sense of hope to anybody that's listening that might need it, and as kind of a philosophy that I like to embody. I think there were some wise words in there. I really try to emulate it, but I kind of wanted to just thank everybody for tuning in. And my main thing was to kind of reach out to the people that might be dealing with something. If my example or vulnerability helped you, I'm glad it did. That was kind of my goal in it. But if maybe you're not ready to kind of share that out loud with everybody else yet, that's fine. At the end of the day, you function on your own time and nobody else's. But if you do need somebody to talk to, I have my Instagram up, or if you want to just reach out through the Instagram page for the podcast, or if you have my number, I try to make myself as available as possible. But I hope that everybody can kind of continue to live the life that you are meant to live, and reach past the obstacles that you may be dealing with, no matter how difficult it may seem right now. But I would like to thank you guys for tuning again today. 25 years down, another 25 to go, but thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you.